Welcome, dear viewers, to another fascinating journey through the hidden stories of the Bible. If you love uncovering forgotten figures, lost truths, and biblical mysteries that rarely get preached from the pulpit, then you're in the right place. Today, we dive into the story of a woman you may have never heard of, yet she was the wife of one of the most important figures in history. When we talk about Abraham, most people immediately think of Sarah, his first wife, the mother of Isaac, and the woman who laughed when God promised her a child in her old age. Some might even remember Hagar, the Egyptian servant who bore him Ishmael. But what if I told you? Abraham had another wife after Sarah, one whose story has remained largely hidden. This woman was Keturah, and her role in biblical history is more important than most people realize. She gave Abraham 6 more sons, yet her story is barely mentioned. Who was she? Where did she come from? And why is her lineage so often overlooked? The Bible gives us only a few verses about Keturah, yet those verses hold the key to understanding a greater mystery, one that connects Abraham to nations beyond Israel and reveals God's unfolding plan for the world. But before we dive deep into this fascinating story, let's ask ourselves, why is Keturah so forgotten? The Bible dedicates entire chapters to Sarah and Hagar, detailing their struggles, their faith, and their relationships with Abraham. Yet when it comes to Keturah, we get only a brief mention in Genesis 25. Was her story intentionally left in the shadows? Or have we simply not paid enough attention? Stay with me as we uncover the hidden story of Abraham's forgotten wife and the destiny of her children. You'll be surprised at how much her lineage connects to major biblical events, and how her descendants played a crucial role in shaping history. So, grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's embark on this biblical journey together. The forgotten wife of Abraham. Many believers have heard of Sarah and Hagar, but very few know that Abraham had another wife who bore him 6 more sons, sons whose descendants would go on to influence history in unexpected ways. This story is one of mystery, forgotten legacies, and hidden connections in Scripture. As we explore this topic, we will answer some key questions. Who was Keturah? Was she just another wife of Abraham, or did she have a greater significance? Was she a Canaanite, an Egyptian, or could she have been someone much more important? Some ancient traditions even suggest she was Hagar, returning under a new name. Could this be true? Why is her marriage to Abraham often overlooked? Sarah and Hagar's stories are told in great detail, but Keturah's is tucked away in just a few verses. Was there a reason for this? Was her role less important, or was her story intentionally downplayed? The significance of her children. Keturah bore 6 sons to Abraham: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. But what happened to them? Were they part of God's covenant, or were they destined for something else? How do their descendants fit into biblical history? How her descendants shaped history. Many people don't realize that Keturah's lineage connects to some major biblical events, including the story of Moses, the conflicts with the Midianites, and possibly even the rise of certain Arab tribes. Could some of her descendants still have an impact today? We will break down each of these questions, analyzing Scripture, historical records, and biblical interpretations to uncover the truth about Keturah. Who was Keturah? Let's start by answering the most basic question: who was this woman that Abraham married late in his life? The Bible introduces Keturah in Genesis 25 verse 1. Then again Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah. And she bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Genesis 25 verses 1-2. That's it. In just 2 verses, we are given her name and her children, but no further details about her background, her relationship with Abraham, or her significance. Unlike Sarah, whose entire journey with Abraham is documented from the time they left Ur, Keturah appears suddenly, almost as an afterthought. Who was she before she married Abraham? Was Keturah a Canaanite or an Egyptian? The Bible does not tell us Keturah's nationality, leading to many speculations among biblical scholars and historians. 1. Some believe she was a Canaanite, which would align with the fact that Abraham lived among the Canaanites at the time. However, this would be surprising because Abraham was careful to ensure that Isaac did not marry a Canaanite, Genesis 24 verses 3-4. Would he have married one himself? 2. Others suggest she may have been Egyptian or from another prominent ancient people. Some scholars argue that she might have come from the surrounding nations that descended from Noah's sons. 3. Was Keturah actually Hagar? This is one of the most debated theories. In Jewish tradition, the Midrash states that Keturah was actually Hagar, renamed after reconciling with Abraham. The reasoning is that Keturah means incense or fragrance, symbolizing that her deeds were now righteous before God. But is this claim supported by the Bible? We will examine this more closely later. Regardless of her origins, one thing is certain: she was chosen by Abraham in his old age and bore him 6 sons. This leads to another major question: why is her marriage to Abraham so overlooked? Why is Keturah's marriage to Abraham overlooked? Keturah's story is mentioned after Sarah's death, and many assume she was simply a lesser wife or concubine. However, the Bible explicitly calls her a wife. This is important because it means Abraham honored her position in his household. Was she just a concubine? Although Keturah is called Abraham's wife in Genesis 25 verses 1 and 1 Chronicles 1:32 refers to her as a concubine. Now the sons of Keturah, Abraham's concubine, she bore Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. 1 Chronicles 1 verse 32. This raises another question: was she truly a wife or a concubine? Some scholars believe that the term concubine was used because her sons were not considered the primary heirs of Abraham's covenant. Others argue that she was both, a secondary wife, not on the same level as Sarah, but still legally married to Abraham. Regardless of her status, one thing remains clear: her children were important enough to be recorded in the genealogy of Abraham. The significance of her children. Keturah bore Abraham 6 sons, each of whom went on to form their own people groups. Zimran, some historians believe his descendants may have settled in Arabia. Jokshan, the father of Sheba and Dedan, whose names are linked to Arabian tribes. Medan and Midian, the Midianites became a major group in biblical history, interacting with Moses. Ishbak, little is known about his descendants. Shua, possibly the ancestor of the Shuhite people, one of whom was Job's friend Bildad. The Midianites, in particular, played a critical role in the Bible. They were both allies and enemies of Israel at different times. Moses himself married a Midianite woman, Zipporah. This means Keturah's descendants were connected to one of the greatest prophets in history. How did Keturah's descendants shape history? Although Keturah's children were not part of the Abrahamic covenant, which passed through Isaac, they still had a significant impact on biblical history. The Midianites became a powerful nation that interacted with Israel throughout the Old Testament. Sheba and Dedan are linked to major trade routes and might be connected to the Queen of Sheba. Many scholars believe Keturah's lineage contributed to Arab tribes that later influenced the Middle East. Even though Keturah's sons were sent away from Isaac, Genesis 25 verse 6, their influence continued for generations. Keturah's story may be short, but it carries huge implications for understanding biblical history. Her marriage to Abraham was not just an afterthought, it was part of God's larger plan to make Abraham a father of many nations. Her sons may not have inherited the covenant, but they carried Abraham's bloodline into the world. And though she is often forgotten, her legacy continues through the nations that descended from her. Now let's take a quick glance at Abraham's later years. Was his move to marry a love story or a strategic move? After Sarah's passing, Abraham was over 137 years old, an age when most men would consider their life's work complete. He had witnessed miraculous events, walked with God, and even fathered Isaac in his old age. It would seem logical for him to live the rest of his years in quiet solitude, reflecting on God's promises. But something unexpected happened: he married again. This new wife, Keturah, was no mere concubine or servant. Genesis 25 verse 1 explicitly states, Abraham took another wife, whose name was Keturah. This was no secret affair or casual relationship. This was a marriage. But why? Was this a romantic love story, where an aging Abraham found comfort and companionship in his final years? Or was it a strategic move, ensuring that his legacy and influence extended beyond Isaac? Many scholars believe Abraham's marriage to Keturah was not just about personal fulfillment, it was about the future. Think of this, Keturah bore him 6 more sons. This wasn't an elderly man simply seeking companionship, it was a deliberate act of continuing his lineage. But why was that necessary? Isaac was already chosen as the covenant heir. Ishmael had been sent away but was promised to become a great nation. What was Abraham trying to achieve with more sons? Perhaps Abraham foresaw the need to strengthen his bloodline across different regions. By having more sons, he ensured that his descendants would spread throughout the ancient world, influencing different nations. Or perhaps, as some Jewish traditions suggest, Abraham knew that God's promise extended beyond just one chosen son. Maybe Keturah's children were always meant to play a significant role in God's grand design. But if that were true, why were they so quickly forgotten? For centuries, Keturah's descendants have been overshadowed, their names fading into the background of biblical history. But what if I told you that their impact was far greater than we ever realized? The Bible briefly lists the 6 sons of Keturah, yet their legacy stretches beyond those few verses. These sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, scattered across the ancient world, forming powerful tribes and influencing history in ways we rarely acknowledge. Some scholars believe Keturah's sons intermingled with Ishmael's descendants, forming the early Arabian tribes that would one day play a pivotal role in world history. Others point to the Midianites, who, despite their later conflicts with Israel, also produced figures like Jethro, the wise priest, and Zipporah, the wife of Moses. This leads to a chilling realization: Keturah's sons may have shaped history more than we ever imagined. But why did their story remain hidden? Could it be that they were always meant to play a role behind the scenes, influencing the world without direct recognition? Or, was their exile a missed opportunity, a tragic consequence of Abraham's difficult choice to send them away? Whatever the case, one thing is certain: Keturah's children did not vanish into obscurity. They carried Abraham's bloodline across nations, their presence felt in whispers throughout the ages. And yet, one of the most shocking revelations about Keturah is not just about her children, but about who she may have been. What if Keturah represents the unsung heroes of history, the people who may not have been at the center of dramatic events, but whose presence shaped the world nonetheless? The story of Keturah is more than just a forgotten tale, it is a hidden gem in the Bible, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to look deeper. And now that we've explored this mystery together, let me ask you: what do you think? I want to hear from you. Do you think Keturah deserved more recognition in the Bible? Why do you think God allowed her children to be separated from Isaac's line? Could Keturah's descendants have played an even greater role in history than we realize? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue uncovering the hidden stories of the Bible together. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Keturah, the forgotten wife of Abraham, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another fascinating biblical mystery. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.